you know who I could never survive without, quite honestly?
That's a great segue.
It's redheads keep me alive, honestly, personally, and professionally. This one, it's professionally. It's Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat writer, Charlie O'Connor. Chuck, hey, at least like it went to overtime, but it's a day game, so you'll get out of there in some semblance of time. Before we get into the rest, thoughts on the game and any standout comments from the post-game availabilities?
Yeah, I think my thoughts on the game are pretty much in line with what John Tortorella said after the game, which is that they played a pretty good game. First two periods, yeah, they make a couple mistakes. They blow that 4-on-2 that leads to a goal. Then Kolosov gives up a real howler on the second one. But beyond that, the first two periods, I thought the Flyers played well. They generated a lot of chances. They just couldn't finish. And look, some of that is their inherent flaws as a team. They are not a good finishing team. They haven't been for the last few years. Last year, they weren't a great finishing team either. So that's just something that you're going to have to deal with this team. That said, with the amount of scoring chances they created in the first two periods, they should have at least had one goal, if not two. Like they played well enough to at least be tied in that game, if not winning. And then suddenly they're down 2-0. Third period, in all honesty, they probably didn't even control the play as much as they did in the first two. It's just a couple pucks went in. Sean Couturier makes a real good play on the first goal. And then Noah Cage just gets the puck on net. Cam York sets a really good screen, which, like, the defenseman setting a screen, that was a weird play, but hey, it worked. And then you get the game to overtime, and Matvei Michkov now has 2 overtime goals in the last 2 weeks. Like, this is just kind of maybe something we need to start expecting from him, that, like, he's just going to come up big in these situations. And you get it to overtime and let Michkov make his magic happen, and it's more or less what happened here. I thought overall, team played pretty well. It's just that they have flaws. They got a little unlucky. And then third period, they finally got some luck and got some finishing and then let Michkov do his stuff in overtime.
Charlie, maybe I'm just looking for it, but Matvei Michkov, you said it. He seems to have a real flair for the dramatic. Now, overtime, like, you give this guy time and space and he's a magician, so it makes sense. But you just look at the teams and opponents he's scored against. 2 goals against McDavid. A goal at Washington in front of Ovi, 3 points in 2 games against him. Goal and an assist against Kaprizov's Wild. Goal and assist against Celebrini and Will Smith, who got drafted ahead of him in 2023. And then the overtime winner against Claude Giroux sends now head-to-head against Connor Bedard, gets another overtime winner. Is there something to this that maybe he just has a little bit more? Is it just random? I know you probably think it's just random, but I don't know. I see a pattern here.
I was actually on board with you until you threw Claude Giroux's Ottawa Senators. I don't think Matvei Michkov cares at all about Claude Giroux.
But I do.
You do. You care. I think the Senators are the one team that doesn't quite fit in that narrative because they are kind of an irrelevant team in the grand scheme of things. The other teams, yeah, maybe. Maybe he was a little bit extra ramped up to play Celebrini, Will Smith. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's bitter that he got taken over him. Who knows? McDavid definitely, Ovi definitely. So there might be something to it. I think you're stretching it a little bit with Ottawa. But you know what, Bill? Sure, it makes you happy to see him score against Drew.
It's also an overtime winner, which makes it a bit more dramatic.
That is fair. And I did actually, I asked Michkov, because we talked to him today after the game through the translator Slava. And I asked him, what allows him to have the right mentality, to be able to come through in these moments, which does seem like it's becoming his thing, at least in the early stages of NHL career. And I have to go back and transcribe the exact quote, but great line from Michkov. He basically said, you have to be cold-blooded. That's good. That's the good stuff right there. So cold-blooded Michkov, I like it.
Cold-blooded. We got some returns today, some much-awaited returns. You called Frost you called York a defenseman. He is obviously a rover setting that screen. But how did you think Frost, York, and Andre looked in their returns to action after some time off?
Yeah, I thought Andre was mostly good. He made some mistakes, but I thought he was doing stuff Love that one play he made in the first period where he has the stretch pass to Michkov and then follows it up and ends up getting a chance as well. Like, a lot of defensemen make that pass and they just hang back. Nah, Andre's going. Love that about him. Had some good defense too on Bedard once where he played him real tight. Didn't show any didn't show any fear. I think that's what I tweeted out on Blue Sky, that there was no fear in Andre. Made some mistakes. He's a little rusty, but he was fine. York, I thought, in the early stages of the game, and John Tortorella agreed, he mentioned this as well in his postgame, but early stages, first half of the game, York looked very rusty. He did not look good. Thought in the third period, he started to kind of come back into form. Obviously, has the really good screen on the Kate Skull. As for Frost, I thought he was playing with a lot of energy. I thought the effort and the jump was there. Tortorella, after the game, praised his defensive work, said he really liked the competitiveness that he showed. That said, Morgan Frost is in the lineup to score. And he didn't do a lot with the puck. He had that one really good chance in the third period that he puts right into Peter Mrazek's chest. That was the one time where you're like, oh, man, if he would have got that, that would have been a great story to write. But he just needs to do more with the puck. I like the energy. I like the compete, and so did John Tortorella. That said, like, you're not putting Morgan Frost in the lineup to be a checker. You're putting him in the lineup to do things with the puck and score, and he didn't do that tonight. So, mixed bag, I would say, from Frost. Mixed bag, really, from all of them. Frost was the one I was keeping the closest eye on just because, if Cam York has a bad game, it's a bummer, but whatever. If Morgan Frost completely flopped tonight, like maybe they trade him tomorrow. I don't know. So I was obviously, paying extra close attention to Frost. He clearly wants it, like the effort's there, but they just need more from him, and he knows that.
Yeah, that's we said the same thing earlier. Like maybe a couple of basically 2 weeks out of the lineup, you're a little rusty. Maybe you don't have your hands, you don't have the flow of the game. But you do have control of your effort. I saw plenty of that tonight. It's just like, bro, you got to score. And more than anything, you got to score against Chicago. So Chicago sends us those 2 second-round picks that CHGO said maybe they'd be willing to give up in a trade.
Okay.
Tell you who had a hell of a game tonight, another potential trade target for teams fighting for playoff positioning, Rasmus Ristolainen. He was all over the freaking place. Talk about a rover. I don't know how he didn't score on the wraparound, but a couple good keeps at the line, some plays down low. What was up with Risto tonight? He seemed motivated.
The wraparound was funny. I enjoyed that. I really thought he was going to score on that play. Really did.
I can't believe he didn't.
Yeah, it looked like it was going in, and then there's the desperation play from the Chicago defenseman basically stopped it. No, Risto was good. Strong underlying metrics. I think Natural Stat Trick has him at 68% expected goals for percentage of 5-on-5. So passes the numbers test. Best on ice goals, expected goals for percentage on the Flyers defense. Yeah, he had a good game. They bounced the pairings around a lot. They shook them up. Andre spent some time with Sanheim. Risto started. He ended up with Sealer, but he was bouncing around. They were really juggling them. Yeah, Risto was good. He made an impact, and look. I do think the end game with Ristolainen is he's ultimately going to be traded before his contract is up. But, I don't think he's going to be traded tomorrow. This is something where if he gets moved, it's going to be at the deadline or it's going to be in the offseason. So until then, Ristolainen is a key part of this defense. He's one of their top 4 defensemen, both in depth chart and in usage. So for him to have good games, it's important, especially when you've got guys like Cam York and Emil Andre coming back from injury and are going to be a little rusty.
Hey, Charlie, JP here. I want to talk about the Flyers offense here today. 37 shots. Lawrence even himself had 8. Was it Mrazek having a really good game, or was just they couldn't simply finish here today?
Probably a little both. As I've said, this Flyers team has a finishing problem. They do. They absolutely do. And it just comes down to just true talent level. They just don't have enough guys that are plus finishers, and especially when you've got guys like Tyson Forrester and Owen Tippett are cold. They're just not scoring as much as you want them to, given the quality of shooting they do have in terms of raw talent. Then they're really going to struggle to score. So I think that's certainly part of it. But Mrazek played well. Mrazek, especially in the first 2 periods, thought he played very well. He was making some tough saves. He wasn't giving up too many rebounds. He was having a strong game. Then in the third period, I don't think he was bad, but he just showed some cracks. I don't think either of those goals are terrible goals he gives up. Obviously, the Michkov one, no way he's stopping that. That's just a fantastic pass. But, the Couturier play, maybe he could have stopped. That would have been an incredible save. I guess you could give him some grief for the Cates goal. But again, he's going through a really good screen by Cam York. Like, yeah, he could have stopped that one. But overall, he had a strong game. I think he was a big part of the reason why the Flyers struggled to score. But you have to remember that the Flyers as a team are just going to struggle to score a lot because they don't have a ton of finishing talent.
Charlie, on the other end, Alexei Kolosov gets a win. Stops 19 of 21 for a 905. The Pat Maroon, who might be the ultimate former Flyer in the league right now in terms of scoring against the Flyers. 8 goals career against them, 18 points. But I thought Kolosov, other than the Maroon goal, pretty solid. A couple of stops on breakaways, odd man rushes. What did you think of, I guess, essentially the number 3 right now?
Well, I mean, he made saves. He made some big ones. I thought one big save he made was that shorthanded breakaway.
Yeah.
That was in the beginning of the second period, I believe, when the score was 1-0. Great save, big momentum stop there. Kept that game maybe from completely spiraling out of control for the Flyers. So he made some big stops. It's just hard for me to call it a good game because that second goal was so bad. Like, that's a goal that you need that puck to be stopped. You do. And Flyers obviously win. They get past it. They outscore that mistake. But that's a big mistake. And I go back to what John Tortorella said a few years ago about Felix Sandstrom. It's like, look, Felix Sandstrom makes big saves, makes 3 or 4 big saves a game. But if he's giving up 1 goal a game that he should stop, that's not NHL caliber. Like, I can't trust a guy who's giving up 1 bad goal a game. And with Kolosov, at least tonight, that was what happened. He gave up a really bad goal. Flyers obviously make up for it. They end up winning in overtime. If he doesn't give up that bad goal, maybe they win in regulation. So I don't think he was terrible. But yeah, goaltending is a position where 1 bad play can kind of spoil a game. And I think that's kind of what happened with Kolosov. Like, I don't think he was bad. I still like him as a prospect. He's got potential. I think he's best served in the AHL. I do. Now, whether he's going to go there is another story. But like, every time I watch him, all I think is this guy should be in the AHL. And that's not me like burying him. That's just me saying he's a young goalie who has a lot of potential, who shows flashes of brilliance, and then makes mistakes that you're hoping as he matures, he will make fewer of. I think that would be best served happening in the AHL, not in the NHL, but obviously it's a weird situation and we'll see how it plays out. So overall, he was okay, I guess. But again, you give up that bad of a goal, it's not an okay game. That's a goal. Like, there are some goals that are not great, but like, whatever, sometimes you give up a weak one. That was a terrible goal. Like, there's no world where that goal should be allowed, and it does put a damper on the rest of his game. I'm sorry.
I think it was like a .02 expected goal, like on that shot, and it ends up in, like, that's rough. Owen Tippett plays sub 14 minutes for just the second time this season. He's a -2. No shots on goal, which it's like, bro, that's like your thing.
Yeah.
What'd you make of Owen Tippett's game tonight? A lot of people online very unhappy with Owen Tippett.
Yeah, it wasn't good. He didn't have a good game. He didn't have an impact. I think I saw, whether it was you or someone else on Twitter, make the point that he can do a lot of good things. He's just never putting them together in one sequence this year. He'll be real fast and then he'll flub a puck move, or he'll, make a great maneuver with the puck and then rip the shot 10 feet wide. Like, he's not putting together sequences of all the good individual things that he occasionally is showing. Yeah, he's not having a good year. And now we're 21 games into the season. We're past the point where you can say this is a cold stretch, because he got on a little bit of a hot streak on that road trip and then has gone right back to not looking good again. So, look, I'm not saying that like Owen Tippett is bad. I think he will eventually get his goals, but I am starting to think that like this just might be a bad year for him.
That's kind of what I've been thinking. Like, I think I know what Owen Tippett is. I'm not ready to go, oh my God, that contract's a disaster. I bet you it's fine and it plays out fine. But this is shaping up to just be that year where you go, man, we expected him to hit 30 and he had 14. Not great. And maybe that's just the way this year goes for him. I'm not worried in the long term, but it sucks because he's a guy you were like hoping to see take a step forward. Do you have anything else, JP?
That's all I got.
All right, Charlie, hit us with those 3 stars of the game, starting with star number 3.
Yeah, star number 3, I'm actually going to go with a Blackhawk. I thought Lucas Reichel, I thought, was really good in this game, despite the fact that he's on the fourth line. He gets that nice goal early, but I just thought overall he was very noticeable in this game. He's a young guy. I think they have pretty solid expectations for. I was surprised going into this game that he was starting on the fourth line, and then immediately he scores a goal. He looks like an intriguing young player, and you pointed out on Twitter during the game that it's weird looking at this Blackhawks roster because they have so many old dudes. He's one of the few young dudes that they have on their roster. And I thought he showed well. I thought he was, like, let me put it this way. I noticed him, which shouldn't be the case. I noticed him more than I noticed Bedard. So Reichel is my third star.
Yeah, I know. We'll do this after star. Star number 2.
Star number 2, I'm going to go with Sean Couturier. Saw a lot of frustration with Couturier over the first 2 periods. It seemed like he became, especially because he had that one really good chance in front that he wasn't able to finish on. It seemed like he became like the stand-in for all the frustration that fans were having about the team not being able to finish in the first 40 minutes. But then he comes up with the big goal, and that was what the Flyers needed. They just needed 1 because they were playing well enough where you were like, if they just get 1, they're probably going to get 2 because they're outplaying this team. The Blackhawks are not very good. So just find a way to get that 1, and the second one will probably come naturally. Couturier is the one who finally breaks the door down. Another strong game by the advanced metrics. Obviously, you want to see Couturier score more. He gets the goal tonight, but he's playing good hockey. He is playing good hockey, aside from the fact that he's not scoring as much as people want. But the core of his game is strong. So it was nice to see him get rewarded. For that reason, second star.
And finally, tonight's first star.
Yeah, first star is Matvei Michkov. And it's funny because I don't think he played all that well through most of the game. He had some plays. He had that one between the legs one in the first period that Andre then followed up on off the stretch pass. So he made some plays, but he also flubbed some passes, uncharacteristically, had some turnovers that you don't usually see him make. But the great thing about Matvei Michkov is that even if he's having a relatively underwhelming game, he still seems to have that knack for coming through when it matters the most. And the fact that we're seeing that from a 19-year-old is really cool. Because if he's got that innate ability now, like, imagine how often he's going to come through when, like, the rest of his game fully comes together. It's really exciting. Fans have every right to be as excited as they are about Matvei Michkov, and for that reason, he is my first star of the game.
Perfect, Charlie. I know for the most part you pay attention to the Flyers. That's your main goal. You cover the Flyers. This is a Flyers show. But it's Mish versus Bedard. Like, this was kind of a big deal. Yeah. They showed during the broadcast, like, the U18s from a couple of years ago when Michkov wins the tournament MVP, but Bedard, wins the tournament, basically. And, like, it's kind of a rivalry. It might end up being the top 2 players from that draft, even though, we were lucky enough to get Michkov at 7. Bedard really struggling right now. They've moved him to left wing from center. He has not scored since October 26th, almost a full month since his last goal. Led all their forwards at ice time with over 18 minutes tonight, but doesn't get a shot. What the hell is, like, it's just weird, right? Just sophomore slump?
I'm not even ready to call it a sophomore slump because, I mean, looking at his numbers, he still has 15 points in 20 games. Like, he's still producing overall. He's going through a little down period. And it's probably instructive for Flyers fans to look at what's going on with Bedard, who was the one player in that draft class who universally people thought higher of him than they did of Michkov. I mean, if Connor Bedard can go through 2-3 weeks of struggles in his sophomore year, like, don't freak out when next year in December, Michkov goes 3 weeks without a goal. Like, it's going to happen. This is what happens with young players. They go through struggles. They do. They all are. Even Michkov, Bill, even Michkov will go through struggles. He will. It's going to happen. And it's going to be part of the developmental process. And we're seeing with Bedard that it's hitting him right now just how difficult it is to be a really good NHL player. I fully expect that he's going to get there. I think that maybe as soon as next year, he's going to be one of the better players in the NHL. But it's going to take time. It takes all these guys time. Very few players are Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin good in their first season. And even those guys got better. So Bedard, like, yeah, he's not having a huge impact right now. There's probably some things he needs to work through, some things he needs to improve upon. He probably just needs a heavy dose of increased confidence too, because he's probably gripping the stick too tight and just feeling it. But I fully expect he's going to get it going at some point, just like when Matvei Michkov invariably has his struggle period, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, whatever. When that inevitably happens, don't freak out, because he's going to work through it, because he's a really good player, just like Bedard is.
Russian machine never breaks, Charlie.
Okay.
All right, that is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat writer, Charlie O'Connor, coming to us from the Wells Fargo Center. What are we doing next? Monday, they play again, right? So we'll probably have pre- and post-game that day. I don't even know when we're doing studio shows again next with all the holidays and everything coming up. But I'll talk to you Monday, Chuck.
See you, Charlie.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.